Well, we've seen what that natural gas explosion did to San Bruno, California. Let's go ahead and rewind to the moment that it happened. Take a look at the security video from a gas station. On the left, you're actually going to see smoke rising. And then boom, explosion and fireball, 6:07 Pacific time Thursday. There it is. More than 36 homes were just blown apart or burned to the ground. Now, PG&E says it will set up a $100 million fund to help rebuild that area. But 4 people are still missing, and at least 4 people were killed, including Janessa Gregg. She was only 13 years old.
The pavilion is not available today.
Well, that's Janessa at her Catholic school. She was student body president. 3 of them in the same family. 3 people who are still missing are all part of that same family, a father, son, and grandmother. Now, that gas pipe was laid in 1948. A section that ruptured is going to a lab now in D.C. for inspection. And this whole episode has to make you wonder if something similar could happen in your neighborhood. We're talking about that with Rick Kessler. He says it can. He's with the Pipeline Safety Trust in Washington. And Rick, I was reading a quote. I actually came across an article this morning, and that's why I really wanted to talk to you. You actually said if this was the FAA and air travel that we were talking about, I wouldn't even get on a plane.
Yeah, that's right. I know I wouldn't anyway, and I wouldn't recommend you do. The agency that oversees pipelines, the Pipeline Hazardous Materials Safety Administration, it's part of the Department of Transportation, we call them PHMSA, is a very undermanned, underfunded agency that really doesn't have the authority it needs to regulate these things, and maybe not even the will to regulate the pipelines. So
what needs to be done? Because as I've been reading on, I mean, this pipe just was decades old, and even some pipe is up to 80 years old, like the steam pipe that ruptured in Manhattan back in 2007. So what needs to be done before something catastrophic like this happens again?
Well, at a minimum, the Pipeline Safety Act that governs nationally all oil and gas pipelines needs to be reauthorized, but it needs a major overhaul. We need more inspections. We need more people to inspect them. We need more stringent penalties. We need better training. We need all sorts of things. And we need a program to deal with these pipelines that are as old as you say. The Natural Gas Act, which governs when these are laid, not their safety, dates back to 1935. So we have pipes in the ground from back then. And there's a lot more. Plus, people don't know what's in their backyard. People don't know where these pipes are. They don't know anything about the inspection record. They don't know anything about the how these pipes were fixed, if problems were found, what problems were found. So we need a right to know for pipelines.
Now, I thought Congress passed a law back in early, I think it was 2002. I took some notes here, required...
I worked on it.
Okay, all right, so you know what I'm talking about. And it required that you that these inspections be done on these pipelines that run through heavily populated areas. So what happened with that, Rick? Because inspections were done, problems were found, but then what happened after that?
Well, you know, there's no real standards for things like leak detection and the repairs of these pipelines. So problems are found, but what standard you have to repair to, what type of steel you use, the welding, all these things, they are not strictly governed. We don't have the type of standards we need. And the '02 Act did a lot of good. It was a very bipartisan bill, Democrats, Republicans, President Bush, and it went a long way. But we were starting, to use a football analogy, from our own end zone, and we made a good jump out to the 30-yard line, but that's nowhere near, you know, the 50-yard line or, you know, a touchdown. So there's a lot to be done.
Rick, the situation, well, I think everyone agrees with you on that point. Definitely a lot to be done. And, you know, we had a number of residents in the San Bruno area when this happened that said on camera, and I remember one in particular saying that this smell of gas was so strong for weeks in this neighborhood. And they called PG&E, and that PG&E came out, and then a couple weeks later, you had this explosion. So what can we do as consumers? Let's say I go home today and I smell gas and my neighbors smell gas and we know there's a problem. What can we do to get our utility company to do something immediately?
Well, Kira, first, I've been remiss. Let me just say my heart goes out to the families of the victims and hope for the survivors, the 4 that are missing. What I think people can do is not just notify the utility, but I think they also need to call local government, whether it's the police, fire, or the California Public Utilities Commission. But I think there's no reporting standard for these things in law that's of any real use. Congressman Mark Schauer of Michigan, in whose district you just had this oil spill, this Enbridge oil spill, has put in a bill that would require notification of local authorities within an hour, I believe. And I think that's something that's attracting bipartisan attention. I think that should be part of any reauthorization. But you know, only 7% of these pipelines, the pipeline mileage, is actually required to be inspected under the 2002 law. We need not only to expand the areas, but a process for continuing to expand the areas of pipeline that have to be inspected, and they've got to be inspected with more rigor than they are today.
Sure.
It's really a lot up to the pipeline company.
And we've got aging gas pipe, you know, nationwide, that's for sure. Rick Kessler, appreciate your time today.
Kira, thank you very much.
You bet. Checking top stories.